Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernardstown Auto Wrecking in Bernardstown, Massachusetts. And you know, sometimes the junkyard is more than a junkyard. It can also be a classroom. Now, a little while ago, we already saw the video on this V6 powered Pontiac Firebird. I think the video is called Baby Formula, because this is a 231 cubic inch V6 flat hood basic Firebird. No pretension here, but this is interesting. Now, if you know your Trans Ams from 1970 all the way through 1981, the shaker hood was a key element on every Pontiac Trans Am. I mean, after all, without that shaker, it wouldn't be a Trans Am, right? Of course, 1969 and a half, they didn't have shakers, but with that said, from 1970 through 1981, the shaker was Trans Am stuff. But here's the crazy part. If we look on the back side of this hood, we'll see that the underhood bracing on this one, this is a 1981 or 80 hood, the bracing is asymmetrical. Sort of has a cutout right here. You're thinking, who would have trimmed this away? Well, nobody. These were stamped this way to protect the underhood bracing for use on the turbo hood. We'll get to that in a second. But it's odd to think that the shaker hood came with the underhood bracing that would be usable on either the shaker or on the turbo. But what about the flat hood? What about that? Let's dig in on this thing. Now this, as we saw in a recent video, the Baby Formula, this is the base car flat hood, no pretensions, but underneath, look at this. Again, the asymmetrical opening. Once again, 1980, 81, the turbo hood would have a lump here and the turbo unit would stick up a little higher. So even on the flat hood, the asymmetrical hood that was protected, as the engineers say, for the turbo hood was used on V6 nothing mobiles. Kind of tells you that engineers, you know, the skin can be different, but quite often the bones underneath can be quite unique. Speaking of which, Katie, you know, we have to talk. My agent and her agent, they talk, right? But this scene stealing, I'm not going to say bitch, but she just steals all the scenes. Anyway, getting back to the matter at hand. Okay, it's time for some magazine fun. Road Test Magazine, September 75. There it is. Okay, the iconic Firebird Trans Am shaker. And again, final year, 75 for the round top shaker. And you can see it right here. It's not functional. 1974 was the final year for the Super Duty, which had a removable panel. But imagine driving down the road and seeing that through the windshield. How cool is that? It doesn't do anything, but it sells the heck out of cars. And here's the thing. This one here is a 455. And in 1976, the final year for the 455, only 7,528 people took it out of 44,114 Trans Ams. But again, that shaker just sells the heck out of Pontiacs. And here it is on Woodward Avenue. They're talking about it right here, the 455 Trans Am. Now again, this is just the basic engine without any of the HO or Super Duty stuff, just a torque monster. But it says right here, the engine in the current 455 is no more than what you would get if you bought a big Pontiac wagon. It absolutely refuses to rev past 5,000 RPMs. Top speed was flat out 118 at 4850 miles RPM. It took a long time to get there and refused to go faster. But with that said, the 70s, everybody suffered the same way. And again, $150 is all it took to get that 455 HO. But again, that Trans Am scoop, standard fare. There's that shaker. Sold the heck out of these cars, even though it didn't do a damn thing. And that's okay with me. Now, you got to remember, too, that Trans Am wasn't the only one. This is 1974, the one and only year for the Baby GTO, based on the Ventura 2 / Chevy Nova. There it is. This is Nunzi Romano, a legend in Pontiac land with the first and last GTO, 64, 74. And again, there it is. He's comparing them. But there it is. There's that shaker right there. And these do actually function, believe it or not. There were 7,058, and they all did have a vacuum flack inside the shaker. Meanwhile, in 74, only the Super Duty had a semi-functional shaker. It had a plate you could remove. 75, it was sealed shut. Let's also remember this. The Pontiac Can-Am, May of 77, Road Test Magazine right here. Look at that. Yeah, that's a shaker. And indeed, but the difference here was that these Can-Ams, the hoods were cut by hand. Only 1,377 of these things were made at Jim Wanger's Motor Town, which was a Troy, Michigan modification center, and they had to cut these hoods by hand, and it got old. It was one of the many reasons why they decided to get out of the Can-Am business, but there it is. The shaker was seen not just on Firebirds, but also on the Baby GTO, and even this, the Le Mans-based Can-Am of 1977. But getting back to the turbo hood, and what's that look like? Well, here we have it. it here. Car and Driver, October 79. And that asymmetrical lump right there, it doesn't shake, doesn't quiver. It's just a bulge to make room for the turbo 301. And here it is right here, Pontiac Trans Am with the turbo. And there we see it right there, the asymmetrical. But again, the hood frame underneath had to be clearanced to make room for the turbocharger equipment. And that same underhood was used on all hoods, including flat ones and shakers. Kind of crazy. But here's the point. I love this. 3 strikes, no balls. Oh, mean, horrible. But with that said, you know, Pontiac was in their swing and they were trying. 0 to 60. You know, 8.2, not horrible. 16.7 and 86 in the quarter, not terrible. But again, this is the Trans Am here that does not have a shaker, the turbo of 1980 and 81. And finally, you know, we talk about Trans Am. Where's that word come from? You know, we all know, of course, the SCCA, the Sports Car Club of America, had the Trans Am Road Racing Series, Trans-American, several tracks across America, the Boss 302s, the Z28s, the Firebird Trans Ams, Cougars would all duke it out. Well, this is a November 76 issue of Sports Car magazine, the SCCA's mouthpiece, right here, the house organ, making the Firebird. And again, 1976, so the deal was well sealed. But it's a story about the Firebird. But if you look on the right, of course, it's the Trans Am version that draws the major part of Firebird's following, and as official car for SCCA's Trans Am series, is appearing on the race course as well as the parking lots at SCCA sanctioned events. For 1976, we expect to sell about 100,000 Firebirds. For 1977, 115 and on up. Here's the deal. Pontiac paid the SCCA $5 per car. So from 1970 through 1981, there were 443,672 Trans Ams times $5. $22 million was paid from General Motors to the SCCA. So, you know, you got to wonder, in 69 and a half, when the original Firebird Trans Am came out, it's supposed to be a limited production car, SCCA, how much do you want? $5 a car. They could have made $100 a car and really cashed in, but still, with like a 500,000 Trans Am, the SCCA made $22 million on licensing that name. And again, almost every single one, except for the turbo cars, had that mighty shaker hood that didn't do anything after 1974. But with that said, the underside of those hoods is quite similar, and you know why, because you watched this episode. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the bell so you know when the next video comes out, which is tomorrow morning.